Hey there, you're looking kind of cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out all my other socials. Enjoy. The heavy oak door slammed shut, echoing through the vast, austere mansion. Odin's thunderous voice boomed from his study, summoning his son. Footsteps shuffled reluctantly down the hallway, each step weighted with dread. "You're late again?" Odin's steely gaze bore into his son from behind an imposing mahogany desk. "What's your excuse this time?" I lost track of time, sir. It won't happen again." The young man's voice wavered, his eyes fixed on the intricate Persian rug beneath his feet. Odin leaned back in his leather chair, fingers steepled. "You're right, it won't." A pregnant pause filled the air. "You've left me no choice but to implement a new disciplinary method." The son's head snapped up, confusion etched across his features. "What do you mean?" A smirk played at the corners of Odin's mouth. "You'll see. Now go to your room. You'll find your new attire laid out for you." Bewildered, the young man retreated upstairs. Upon entering his bedroom, his eyes widened in disbelief. Spread across his bed was an array of brightly colored shirts. Neon pinks, vibrant purples, and electric blues. "You can't be serious," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. But Odin was deadly serious. The next morning, clad in a hot pink polo shirt, the son endured curious glances and poorly concealed snickers from the house staff. Days turned into weeks, and the wardrobe evolved. Floral prints replaced solid colors. Fitted shirts gave way to blouses with ruffles and bows. 1 month into this peculiar punishment, Odin called his son into the study once more. "I see you've adapted well to your new look," he remarked, eyeing the lilac blouse and skinny jeans. "But I don't think you've learned your lesson yet. It's time to take it up a notch." The son's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" Odin's lips curled into a cold smile. "You'll find out tomorrow morning." Sleep eluded him that night, anxiety gnawing at his insides. When dawn broke, he discovered a sundress hanging on his closet door, a delicate powder blue number with a sweetheart neckline and a flared skirt. His hands trembled as he slipped it on, the soft fabric settling against his skin. He stared at his reflection, hardly recognizing the person gazing back at him. The dress hugged his waist, accentuating curves he never knew he had. Days passed, and dresses became the new norm. Odin's eyes gleamed with satisfaction each time his son descended the stairs, swathed in chiffon, silk, or cotton. The house staff's initial amusement had faded, replaced by a quiet acceptance of this new reality. 2 months into the punishment, makeup appeared on the vanity. Lipsticks in various shades of pink and red, mascara, blush, and eyeshadow palettes. The son stood before the mirror, hesitantly applying each product with fumbling fingers. As weeks turned into months, something shifted. The initial humiliation gave way to a strange sense of comfort. The soft swish of skirts against bare legs, the gentle weight of earrings, the transformative power of makeup. It all began to feel right. One particularly challenging day, after a series of meetings with his father's business associates, while wearing a floral maxi dress and full makeup, the son collapsed onto the bed, emotions swirling. Tears threatened to spill, but not from embarrassment or shame. Instead, a profound realization dawned. He felt more like himself in these clothes than he ever had in masculine attire. The next day, he made an appointment with his therapist, Dr. Evans. Seated in the plush armchair of her office, wearing an emerald green wrap dress, he poured out his conflicted feelings. "I don't understand what's happening to me," he confessed, wringing his hands. "This was supposed to be a punishment, but I think I like it. I feel more comfortable, more me." Dr. Evans listened intently, her expression neutral. "Have you ever considered that you might be transgender?" The word hung in the air, heavy with implications. He blinked, stunned by the suggestion. I don't know. I never thought about it before." "It's okay not to have all the answers right now," Dr. Evans assured him. "This is a journey of self-discovery. Let's explore these feelings together." Over the next few weeks, their sessions delved deeper into his gender identity. He devoured books and articles on transgender experiences, each story resonating more than the last. Slowly, the pieces began to fall into place. One rainy afternoon, he stood before the mirror in his bedroom, studying his reflection. The person staring back was no longer a man in women's clothing, but a woman waiting to emerge. In that moment, she knew. This was who she was meant to be. The next step was clear, but terrifying. She had to tell Odin. Heart pounding, palms sweaty, she knocked on the study door. Odin's gruff enter sent a shiver down her spine. "Father, I need to talk to you," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. Odin looked up from his paperwork, eyebrows raised. "What is it?" Taking a deep breath, she squared her shoulders. I'm transgender. I'm a woman, and I want to start transitioning." Silence fell over the room like a heavy blanket. Odin's face remained impassive, unreadable. After what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "Are you sure about this?" She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "Yes, I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Odin leaned back in his chair, eyes never leaving his child's face. "I see." Another long pause. "What do you want to be called?" The question caught her off guard. She hadn't even thought about a name yet. But in that moment, it came to her. "Meredith," she said softly. "I'd like to be called Meredith." Odin nodded slowly. "Very well. Meredith, we'll make an appointment with Dr. Simmons tomorrow to discuss your options." Meredith blinked, stunned by her father's unexpected support. "Thank you," she whispered, voice thick with emotion. The following months were a whirlwind of doctor's appointments, hormone therapy, and legal paperwork. Meredith threw herself into her transition with the same determination she'd once applied to her studies and business pursuits. She experimented with different styles, finding joy in expressing her femininity. Some days she embraced flowing bohemian dresses, others she opted for sharp blazers and pencil skirts. Each outfit was a celebration of her true self. As her body began to change, so did her confidence. The hormones softened her features, redistributed fat, and encouraged breast growth. She reveled in these changes, each one bringing her closer to the woman she'd always been inside. One sunny afternoon, Meredith stood before her full-length mirror, admiring her reflection. She wore a fitted red dress that hugged her new curves, her long hair cascading in soft waves over her shoulders. For the first time in her life, she felt truly beautiful. A knock at the door interrupted her reverie. "Come in," she called, turning to see Odin enter the room. He paused, taking in her appearance. "You look happy?" he said finally. Meredith smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that lit up her whole face. "I am happy, Father, happier than I've ever been." Odin nodded, a hint of emotion flickering in his eyes. "Good, that's good." He cleared his throat. "I came to tell you that the board meeting has been moved up. We need to leave in an hour." "Of course," Meredith replied, reaching for her blazer. "I'll be ready." As they drove to the office, Meredith couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought her to this point. What had started as a punishment had become the greatest gift of her life, the discovery of her true self. The car pulled up to the imposing glass building that housed their company. Meredith took a deep breath, straightening her blazer. This would be her first board meeting since fully transitioning. "Ready?" Odin asked, his hand on the door handle. Meredith nodded, a determined glint in her eye. "Ready." They strode into the building side by side, Meredith's heels clicking confidently on the marble floor. As they entered the boardroom, all eyes turned to them. There was a moment of stunned silence, followed by a ripple of whispers. Meredith held her head high, making her way to her seat at the table. She could feel the weight of the stares, some curious, some disapproving, but she refused to let it shake her. Odin cleared his throat, silencing the room. "Before we begin, I'd like to introduce you all to my daughter, Meredith. She will be taking over as our new head of innovation, effective immediately." Meredith's head snapped up, eyes wide with surprise. This was news to her. She looked at Odin, who gave her a small nod of encouragement. Taking a deep breath, Meredith stood. "Thank you, Father. I'm honored to take on this role and excited to share my vision for the future of our company." As she launched into her presentation, Meredith felt a surge of confidence. This was where she belonged, not just as a woman, but as a leader. The initial skepticism in the room gave way to genuine interest as she outlined her innovative ideas. By the end of the meeting, Meredith had won over even the most resistant board members. As they filed out of the room, several stopped to congratulate her on her new position and compliment her presentation. Once they were alone, Meredith turned to Odin. "Why didn't you tell me about the promotion?" Odin's lips quirked in a rare smile. "I wanted to see how you'd handle it. And you exceeded my expectations, as always." Meredith felt a warmth bloom in her chest. Coming from Odin, this was high praise indeed. "Thank you for giving me this opportunity," she said softly. Odin placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch uncharacteristically gentle. "You earned it, Meredith. Not because you're my daughter, but because you're the best person for the job." As they left the office that evening, Meredith couldn't help but marvel at how far she'd come. From a confused young man forced into dresses as punishment, to a confident woman embracing her true identity and taking on a leadership role in the family business. The sun was setting as they drove home, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. Meredith leaned her head against the window, a contented smile playing on her lips. She thought about the journey ahead, the challenges she'd face, the prejudices she'd have to overcome. But for the first time in her life, she felt ready to face whatever came her way. Because now, finally, she was living as her authentic self. And that made all the difference in the world. As weeks turned into months, Meredith settled into her new role both at work and in her personal life. She threw herself into her position as head of innovation, bringing fresh ideas and a new perspective to the company. Her unique experiences allowed her to see problems from angles others might miss, and her solutions were often groundbreaking. At home, she continued to explore and refine her personal style. She found joy in the little things, choosing the perfect accessories to complement an outfit, experimenting with new makeup techniques, or simply reveling in the feel of a silk blouse against her skin. One Saturday morning, as Meredith was enjoying her coffee on the terrace, Odin joined her. He settled into the chair across from her, his face uncharacteristically hesitant. "Meredith," he began, his voice gruff with emotion, "I owe you an apology." She looked up, surprised. "What for?" Odin sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "For the way I treated you. The punishment. It was cruel. I thought I was teaching you a lesson, but instead, I was forcing you to confront something you weren't ready for." Meredith set down her coffee cup, considering her words carefully. "You're right, it was cruel, and it could have gone very differently." She paused, meeting her father's eyes. "But in a strange way, I'm grateful. Without that push, I might never have discovered who I truly am." Odin nodded slowly, his eyes misty. "You're an extraordinary woman, Meredith. I hope you know how proud I am of you." Emotion welled up in Meredith's throat. She reached across the table, taking her father's hand. "Thank you, Dad. That means more than you know." As the months passed, Meredith's confidence grew. She began to venture out more, no longer content to limit herself to work and home. She joined a support group for transgender individuals, finding comfort and camaraderie among others who understood her journey. It was at one of these meetings that she met Claire, a vivacious redhead with a quick wit and an infectious laugh. The two women hit it off immediately, bonding over their shared experiences and love of vintage fashion. Their friendship blossomed quickly, and soon they were spending most of their free time together. Claire introduced Meredith to new experiences, drag shows, LGBTQ+ friendly clubs, and a whole community she'd never known existed. One evening, as they were getting ready for a night out, Claire turned to Meredith with a mischievous glint in her eye. "You know, Mir, I think it's time we find you a date." Meredith nearly dropped the mascara wand she was holding. "A date? I don't know, Claire. I'm not sure I'm ready for that." Claire plopped down on the bed, her emerald green dress rustling. "Why not? You're gorgeous, smart, and successful. Any person would be lucky to have you." Meredith sighed, setting down her makeup. It's not that simple. Dating as a trans woman, it comes with its own set of challenges. Of course it does, Claire agreed, her voice softening. But that doesn't mean you don't deserve love and companionship. You just need to find someone who appreciates you for who you are. Meredith considered this, studying her reflection in the mirror. The woman who looked back at her was beautiful, confident and strong. Maybe Claire was right. Maybe it was time to open herself up to the possibility of romance. Okay, she said finally, a small smile playing on her lips. But let's start small. Maybe a coffee date? Claire squealed with delight, pulling Meredith into a hug. That's my girl. Now, let's finish getting ready. We've got some dancing to do. As they stepped out into the warm summer evening, Meredith felt a sense of excitement she hadn't experienced in years. She was embarking on a new chapter of her life, one filled with possibilities she'd never dared to dream of before. The club was alive with pulsing music and swirling lights. Meredith let the rhythm wash over her, moving her body in ways that felt natural and freeing. As she danced, she caught the eye of a tall, handsome man across the room. He smiled, and Meredith felt a flutter in her stomach. Maybe, just maybe, she was ready for this next step after all. The next morning, Meredith woke with a smile on her face, memories of the previous night's dancing and laughter filling her mind. She reached for her phone, finding a text from Claire. Hope you're not too hungover. Don't forget, we're meeting that cute guy from the club for coffee at 2. Wear that blue dress. It makes your eyes pop. Meredith's heart skipped a beat. In the excitement of the evening, she'd almost forgotten about agreeing to the coffee date. His name was Michael, she remembered. They'd talked briefly at the club, and he'd seemed genuinely interested in getting to know her. As she got ready, Meredith found herself more nervous than she'd been in a long time. She smoothed her hands over the soft fabric of her blue dress, taking a deep breath to steady herself. You can do this, she murmured to her reflection. The cafe was bustling when she arrived. She spotted Michael at a corner table, his face lighting up when he saw her. As she approached, he stood, pulling out her chair. You look beautiful, he said warmly. I'm really glad you agreed to meet me. Meredith smiled, feeling some of her nervousness melt away. Thank you. I'm glad too. They fell into easy conversation, discussing their jobs, hobbies, and favorite books. Michael was charming and attentive, asking thoughtful questions and listening intently to her answers. As their coffee cups emptied, Meredith knew it was time. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what she needed to say. Michael, before this goes any further, there's something you should know about me. She paused, her heart racing. I'm transgender. I hope that doesn't change anything, but I understand if it does. Michael was quiet for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. Meredith, thank you for trusting me with that. It doesn't change how I feel. I like you for who you are, and I'd love to get to know you better. Relief washed over Meredith, bringing with it a wave of emotion. She blinked back tears, a watery smile on her face. I'd like that too, she said softly. As they left the cafe, Michael gently took her hand. Would you like to go for a walk in the park? He asked. Meredith nodded, her heart light. As they strolled through the sun-dappled paths, she marveled at how far she'd come. From a young man trapped in a life that didn't fit, to a woman embracing all the possibilities that lay before her. She knew there would be challenges ahead. The world wasn't always kind to people like her. But for the first time, she felt truly equipped to face whatever came her way. She had the support of her father, the love of friends like Claire, and now potentially a new romance blossoming. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the park, Meredith squeezed Michael's hand. He looked down at her, his eyes warm. What are you thinking? He asked. Meredith smiled, her heart full. I'm thinking that life has a funny way of working out. Sometimes the things we fear the most end up leading us exactly where we need to be. Michael nodded, understanding in his eyes. Well, I for one am glad your path led you here. As they continued their walk, Meredith felt a sense of peace wash over her. She was Meredith now, strong, confident, and ready to embrace whatever the future held. The journey hadn't been easy, but standing here in this moment, she knew without a doubt that it had been worth it. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of pink and orange. Meredith and Michael found a bench overlooking a small pond, settling in to watch the last light fade from the day. "Tell me more about your work," Michael said, his arm draped casually across the back of the bench. "You mentioned you're in charge of innovation at your company?" Meredith nodded, her eyes lighting up. "Yes, it's a relatively new position. I've been working on implementing more sustainable practices across all our divisions. It's challenging, but incredibly rewarding." As she spoke about her projects, Michael listened attentively, asking insightful questions. Meredith found herself impressed by his genuine interest and understanding of complex business concepts. "What about you?" she asked, turning the conversation to him. "You mentioned you're in tech, right?" Michael nodded, a slightly sheepish smile on his face. "I am. I actually run a small startup focused on developing accessibility tools for people with disabilities. It's not as glamorous as your corporate world, but it's work I'm passionate about." Meredith felt a warmth bloom in her chest. "That's amazing, Michael. The world needs more people like you, focused on making a difference." As the last traces of daylight faded, they reluctantly stood, neither quite ready for the evening to end. "Can I walk you home?" Michael asked, his voice soft. Meredith hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I'd like that." They strolled through the quiet streets, their conversation flowing easily from topic to topic. As they approached Meredith's building, she felt a mix of disappointment that the night was ending and excitement for what might come next. At her door, they paused, facing each other. Michael reached out, gently taking her hand. "Meredith, I've had a wonderful time tonight. Would you like to have dinner with me next weekend?" A smile spread across Meredith's face. "I'd love to." Michael leaned in slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away if she wanted. Instead, Meredith closed the distance between them, their lips meeting in a soft, sweet kiss. When they parted, both were slightly breathless. "Good night, Meredith," Michael said, his voice warm. "Good night, Michael," she replied, her heart fluttering. As she entered her apartment, Meredith leaned against the closed door, a giddy smile on her face. She felt like a teenager again, experiencing the thrill of a first kiss. But this was so much more meaningful, because it was her first kiss as her true self. The next morning, Meredith woke to a text from Michael, wishing her a good day and saying he was already looking forward to their dinner date. She replied with a smiling emoji and a simple, "Me too." At work, Meredith threw herself into her projects with renewed energy. Her personal happiness seemed to spill over into her professional life, inspiring new ideas and solutions to long-standing problems. During her lunch break, she called Claire to fill her in on the coffee date and subsequent walk in the park. "Oh my God, Mir!" Claire squealed through the phone. "A goodnight kiss? That's so romantic. When's the wedding?" Meredith laughed, shaking her head even though Claire couldn't see her. "Slow down. It was just one date. But it was a really good one. I'm so happy for you," Claire said, her voice softening. "You deserve this, you know. All the happiness in the world." Meredith felt tears prick at her eyes. "Thank you, Claire. I'm starting to believe that myself." As the week progressed, Meredith and Michael texted regularly, getting to know each other better. They discovered a shared love of obscure foreign films, debated the merits of various sci-fi authors, and exchanged funny stories about their respective workdays. By the time Saturday rolled around, Meredith was a bundle of nervous excitement. She spent far too long deciding on her outfit, finally settling on a sleek black dress that made her feel elegant and confident. Michael arrived precisely on time, looking handsome in a well-fitted suit. His eyes widened appreciatively when he saw her. "You look stunning," he said, offering her a bouquet of tulips. Meredith blushed, accepting the flowers. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." The restaurant Michael had chosen was intimate and cozy, with soft lighting and quiet jazz playing in the background. Over a delicious meal, They delved deeper into conversation, sharing stories from their childhoods and discussing their hopes for the future. As they talked, Meredith found herself opening up more than she had with anyone in a long time. She told Michael about her journey, the difficulties she'd faced, and the joy she'd found in finally living as her true self. Michael listened with compassion, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand supportively. "You're incredibly brave, Meredith. Thank you for sharing that with me." As the evening drew to a close, neither wanted it to end. They decided to take a walk along the river, the city lights reflecting off the water. "Can I ask you something?" Michael said, as they strolled hand in hand. "Of course," Meredith replied. "Where do you see this going? Between us, I mean." His voice was hesitant, vulnerable. Meredith stopped walking, turning to face him. "Honestly, I'm not sure, but I know I like you, Michael. A lot. And I'd like to see where this could go, if you're willing." Michael's face broke into a wide smile. "I'm more than willing," he said, pulling her close. Thanks for watching. The rest won't be viewable on YouTube, so check out Patreon if you want more. I hope you have a wonderful day, my cutie.